Hi, thanks a lot for coming out. This is really impressive. And I'll try to make you not regret it. Is everybody here okay? I was really on the fence about what to read, and I was going to read some brand new stuff, but since this is kind of an audition, I didn't have the courage to. So actually, I'm going back and reading the first short story I ever wrote, but I hope you like it. It's called Ghost Birds. Then the city enters another torpid and simmering May. Parents grimace while pulling their kids through the Museum of Westward Expansion, and barges moan down the Mississippi. Something erupted at the Dowling Industrial Factory, and the gases are making our sunsets plum and plutonium orange. I work from 11 at night until 6 in the morning. The park is deserted, and I keep watch from a small window in a wall of steel 630 feet above the ground. 90 acres of grass and trees on the east, bridges over the river and the lights of St. Louis to the west. I patrol under purple sky. You can't see stars this month. And after surveying the grounds with my official U.S. Park Service binoculars, I squeeze out my window and drop off the top of the St. Louis Arch. I use a Paragee 2, a Velcro-closed single parachute container made by Consolidated Rigging. It holds an Ace 240 square foot canopy, and my gear is black. Helmet, knee and elbow pads, a black scarf over my nose and mouth, but my goggles are the blue glass of 4th generation NV2 night vision. The arch is Pittsburgh steel, called the gateway to the west, and when my leg hangs out the window and high winds break on my face, I can stare down at the dark forest or turn to the far window where St. Louis smolders, and in that moment I feel I might be straddling the sleeping intersection of the country's dreams. Gaijin Funakoshi tells us that truth is contained in dreams. Wind explodes so hard and loud you might be disintegrating. 3 seconds of free fall and about 4 more guiding the canopy down. Sometimes I revolve and descent, like water going down a drain. At the base of the arch, the Museum of Westward Expansion has the dimensions of a football field. In its lobby, I keep a bag and ranger uniform, hustle in after a jump, and emerge seconds later as Ethan Landry, park ranger. Those times, it always takes the quiet darkness to remind me that the park is closed, and I am alone. The old workers' elevator jostles and squeals softly, bearing me up. A radio plays music, and I listen to breaks and static on the call box. Hours crawl toward morning. Since I don't drink anymore, I break the tedium by reading. Stuff like the Book of 5 Rings, Hagakure, Way of the Samurai, the Tao Te Ching. I enjoyed the writings of Black Elk and some of Emerson's essays, but the Eastern mind seems a lot clearer to me. Clarity, I think, is the chief thing. Find a road and walk it. Which as much as anything explains my jumps. The literal definition of base jumping is to parachute off a stationary object, building, antenna, span, or earth. But for me it means narrowing your senses and joining the void. The great samurai Miyamoto Musashi says it is necessary to lose the self and become one with mu, the emptiness of the heart of existence to which everything returns. And thus the warrior finds life and death. That's tougher than it sounds, and I've really only come close once. 3 years ago, kayaking on the Buffalo River in northern Arkansas, I overturned and kicked loose. I smacked into a rock and the kayak shot at me, broke my ankle, whipped around and knocked the molar out and vanished downstream. Pounded by waves, swallowing water, and nearly blind with pain, I clung to the rock, knowing if I got washed away, I was over. On the bank of the river, I noticed a squirrel staring at me. It cocked its head as if asking what I thought I was doing, then spiraled up a tree where I lost it in the branches. I remember a sense of calm then, stillness, and thinking, this is my death. Interesting. The moment was a glimpse of the true universe, a galactic procession that marched on without me. What Dogen calls the 10,000 things. My ankle healed, but rafting lacked something after that, and I discovered skydiving, which led to base jumping. And I started kayaking in the first place because one of the basics they tell you in rehab is that if you're going to stay sober, you have to get physically active. But if none of that makes much sense, let's just say that with the hours I keep, my chief relationship is with gravity, and we're intimate every moonless night around 3 a.m. And we're in May. The skies are hued amethyst and green, and like I said, I can see no stars. At night, the woods lose their depth. take on a flatness and seem to stretch out in a single plane like the overgrown grazing fields on the farm where I grew up. The two spotlights at the bottom of the arch aren't a problem. I fall between them. Though there's no moon tonight, I'm a little wary of the illumination the strange sky creates, as base jumping is effectively illegal in the U.S. Many jumpers take falls in national parks, and park rangers are their traditional nemesis. The irony of my life is so obvious, I don't even think it's irony. Before I jump, I check the park with my binoculars: clipped grass, patches of pine and broadleaf poplars, concrete walkways converging at the old courthouse to the east. A gleam. Behind a tree, I spot a shining flash. I zoom in and see at least two people huddled in the shadows. I'm about to call it in on the radio, but then I see what was gleaming: glass lenses. One of them is looking up at the arch with binoculars. 3 o'clock has brought something new tonight, and I shed my rigging, become a park ranger. The elevator chugs me down, and I creep between trees and crouch behind tall shrubs. I find 3 people, a girl and 2 boys, pretty young, and I remind myself to take it easy on them. At 28, I can still remember the thrill of sneaking around at night. I had a girlfriend who loved exploring forbidden places, our nerves humming along, and whenever we copped, Mabel would lead me through dark spaces crammed with steam pipes and no trespassing signs, staircases to rooftops that ended in kisses. I hold off on my flashlight and move closer because I can hear voices and want to know what they're saying. A burly kid with fat cheeks and glasses is speaking to a thinner boy in a ball cap and trench coat. The girl has been looking at the arch with binoculars. She lowers them and interrupts the boys. I think I saw a ranger up there. Then a human moan breaches the air. I look around and see outcroppings of shadow everywhere. Ahead of this grove, people fill the park, at least a dozen of them. A girl and boy are lying on their backs, the girl pointing to the sky. Another couple making out against a pine tree explained the moan I heard. I've stumbled upon some dream of youth and lust. For vague reasons, this angers me, these young people intruding on my sacred and necessary moments. The flashlight ignites and my deepest voice comes with it. What's going on here? The park is closed. Everybody bolts and I trap the 3 in my beam. Leaves rustle and the dull reverberations of footsteps run through the ground. The boy in the trench coat raises his hand, slowly lowers them and steps forward. Hi? We know the park is closed. We're sorry. We're on assignment for a class. We all go to Washington University. Over his shoulder, the girl watches me. I'm still angry, and as the boy steps into my circle of power, I ponder various angles of coquinage I could use to throw his body over the shrubbery. You're all trespassing. We're in this class, Modern American Myth and Legend. We're working on our final project. See, now the girl speaks up. There's this urban legend that on nights without a moon, something flies down from the arch. I can't make out the shade of her eyes, but they're pale. Frank thinks it's a guy with a parachute, but the descriptions sound like a ghost bird. What? Ghost birds. Native American thunder spirits, gigantic, black with glowing eyes. People have seen them for centuries. Nothing flies off the arch. Frank, I guess, interjects. I personally know 3 people who never met each other and told me stories of seeing this thing fly off the arch. All 3 described something all black with glowing blue eyes. Another connection? There was no moon either night. I researched this. 600 feet is a totally plausible base jump. You can't be watching all the time. Listen, kids, you're trespassing. This is illegal. You're on government property. We're sorry, really. It was just, we wanted to see if it was true. It's not, I say. You need to leave the park. They shuffle off, mumbling apologies, and the girl turns her head and glances at me. Soft features gleam on her face, eyes, lips. Then the students vanish. I trudge back to my office with memories of my own college experience in mind. I was the first person in my family to attend the university, and I remember the students there so like these kids, tan, smiling, walking through stone quadrangles, holding hands, and they all had different haircuts than me, different clothes, and I learned that I did not know how to talk, or dress, or even smile. I remember feeling like a fraud that first year, picturing conspiracies around me. But I had a roommate who bought pot in bulk, and he showed me ways to relax and let the world go. My spine shivers a little when I remember those days, before I learned the necessity of control and found my path. As the elevator takes me up, my mind's eye keeps replaying the girl's parting glance. Miyamoto says that true Bushi divorces himself from desire. But in tonight's shadows, her eyes tugged at something in my lungs that ran down to the place behind my abdomen where chi is stored. And I'm compelled to think of Mabel. So I spend the rest of my shift practicing guided meditation. In the lotus position, I close my eyes and focus on the blue triangle where I store the egoless self, trying not to remember Mabel's laugh and the cleft at the base of her spine, the taste of her sweat or the purple bath water that covered her on our last night. Dead air from the callbox hisses, and I block it out. Morning is a loud wash of white sun, and I hear St. Louis waking up as I ride the tram down. Birds wake, barges wake, everything calling to everything else. A girl stands at the bottom of the arch in a sleeveless white blouse, wind wrapping brown hair around her face, and even before she brushes it away, I know who she is. The park doesn't open until 9, I say. She looks at me with faded green eyes, and her brown hair is streaked by shades of orange. Can I help you, ma'am? It's you, isn't it? She says. I'm sorry? The wind keeps playing with her hair. You're the ghost bird, aren't you? You know there's a website about you? The morning grows noisy and feels too bright. What? If I keep lying, what are my odds? She's much smaller than me, and I consider a Yonkyo nerve pinch to make her unconscious. But I would still have a problem when she woke up. What do you want? I'll tell you in a second. She looks around at the park and up at the arch. Can we go talk somewhere? A coffee shop that smells like butter and icing. She wears a lot of silver and rope bracelets on one arm. Dusky-hued freckles spot her nose and cheekbones. Her name is Erica Gleason, and she's telling me the history of ghost birds, working toward an explanation for something she hasn't said yet. In our class, one of the myths we studied was how throughout history, in every culture, an unexplained thing people see are black, ornithological creatures, enormous bird things with glowing eyes. And they're called different things, but most theory insists the names are meaningless. Erica. I mean angels, demons, monsters, whatever. Erica. I lean over a table. What do you want? She deflates a little, and I'm instantly sorry I interrupted. She sips coffee and looks out the window. People bustle under traffic lights. Horns bleat, brakes squeal. I'm usually in bed right now, preparing to sleep through the day. She turns back to me. I'm just saying, I was disappointed when I figured out it was only you. How did you know that? She bows her head and stirs her coffee. I can tell by the way you acted. And I saw a guy dressed all in black looking at me with binoculars from a window in the arch. Her eyes meet me with consolation. I didn't tell anybody. So, what do you want? Okay, here's the thing. She puts her spoon down. I want you to teach me. Teach what? Base jumping. I try to tell her it doesn't work like that. You don't just go out and base jump. It takes years to accumulate the knowledge needed to do your first jump. It's a continual learning process. I still walk away sometimes. I've skydived before. How many times? Twice. Jeez. I'm wrong to describe her hair as brown. It's more like burnt wheat with copper and russet highlights. This sport isn't about proving anything. It's very personal. People get killed. Very experienced people get seriously injured and killed. Why do you even want to do this? Why do you do it? She asks. And the image of Mabel floating lifeless beneath lavender soap bubbles flashes across my mind. You have to master skydiving first. Even after, there are other people who can teach you. Look, I didn't say anything to anybody, okay? I didn't turn you in or anything. I mean, then why are you talking to me about it? What are you waiting for? She knows that by deliberating, I've already agreed. Silver jangles on her wrist. Her lips are thin and faded. Her collarbone spreads like a shadowy albatross above her chest. And I'm thinking, blue triangle, blue triangle. At my apartment, the answering machine blinks, showing several messages, which makes me uneasy because I don't know who could be calling. After 10 months in St. Louis, my acquaintances encompass a landlord, a mailman, and 2 park rangers who think I'm crazy for pulling the hours I do. In the Hagakure, Sunitomo writes that there is deep power in a solitary man. It is my father's voice on the machine. Ethan, it's your dad. I can't find your mother, son, and I've been trying to get hold of you. You need to bring the horses in. The next message is from an hour later. his voice guttural and slow, twanging words out. Ethan, it's your dad. I can't find your mother, son. I've been trying to get hold of you. You need to bring the horses in. It looks like rain. 3 other messages say roughly the same things, along with suggesting I gather up some potatoes and carrots so my mother can make her soup. Our farm was sold some time ago, after my mother died. I call Green Grove and speak to the head nurse about these messages, and she puts me on hold, comes back and explains that a temporary nurse was working my father's floor yesterday, and that's why he was able to make so many phone calls. She apologizes for the inconvenience. In my room, I lie upon a bamboo mat in the center of the floor and place a sleep mask over my eyes to block out what sun filters through the blinds. When I attempt to envision a beach where I can align my heartbeat with the breaking of waves, I instead see my father one particular morning during my first summer home from college. At dawn, my mother and I found him standing in a field of scrub grass with only a blanket wrapping him, staring at the sun. Brightness engulfed him that morning. We thought he was kidding around at first, but in the intervening years, I've wondered what exactly he was singing. So the ocean in my mind becomes the sounds of warblers and wrens at dawn on my father's farm. And then Erica starts lecturing me about eternal spirits disguised as birds while unbuttoning her white blouse. Unable to sleep, what I really want to do is jump off something. We enter an AFF course, Accelerated Freefall. It's a 7-step program designed to teach skydiving basics. After that, she has 20 jumps till she's a novice jump master. She has money for all this. Her father's a litigator for Dowling Industrial. We start on a small single-engine Cessna whose air tastes like aluminum and petrol. Our bench rattles and dips, the engine sputters. Beyond the door is a roaring radiance. While we're waiting to be flagged out, Erica eyes her static line and says, "Here we go, Geronimo." Don't say that, everybody says that. What do you say? I admit, reluctantly, "Bonsai." She nods and keeps her gaze steady, being tough, betraying no awe or excitement or fear. At 12,500 feet, a jump doesn't even feel like falling, more like being at the center of a cold explosion. You can see the curvature of the planet, the spherical surface that tugs you down. I watch her body tumble, bright red jumpsuit, limbs arched back in perfect form. She shrinks, breaks into white clouds, and I lose her. My arms go straight at my sides and I dive. At about 140 miles an hour, I see her canopy, a ruffled red square below me. My cheeks billow with wind. On the ground, she can't stop smiling, looking up at what we traversed. She cheers and laughs and suggests we go do some shots. I explain that it's just the adrenaline rush and that I don't drink. May's air is thick and heavy, trapped under this purple vapor we're enduring. At night, I worry. Surveying the park grounds, I wonder who's out there watching for me. Erica told me about this website, Birdman of St. Louis. There's a picture on it of a fanged black bird with burning phosphorus eyes, along with message boards and testimonials from people who have seen me. You can order a t-shirt. Skydiving doesn't compare to base. Out of a plane, you're too high and have no real sense of the bottom. Mu, the void, is not so immediate. You can't even glimpse it. And gravity's embrace is more like a languorous tug than a violent slam. I press my hands against the glass and ponder the fall. And the dream life of the sleeping city seems awfully far away as my reflection looks back in the window and parallel light beams shine up from the arch's base like a Zen ladder. 5 jumps later, Erica tells me her mother is an artist who gives lessons at their home and who lost her left breast to cancer 3 years ago. We're eating ice cream, walking in the mall because she wants to get new shoes. She says, "You know, I was really hoping you were some undiscovered animal." I know. You believe in that stuff. She shrugs and licks her cone, swinging her bat from Foot Locker. I guess, probably. There's always stuff we don't know about. Once, in the 1920s, in Texas, for 2 months there was a series of sightings of a black bird as big as a city, perched on the moon. I love that. She wipes caramel off her lip with a finger that she licks while grinning at me, and my chi throbs against my diaphragm like I've swallowed a tiny bomb. Her school lets out for the summer, so we start diving more, 3 times a week. Evening sets in as we walk off the airfield. She says her father's working long hours now. The EPA is giving Dowling Industrial hell. What is that stuff anyway? I ask, tracing an arc across the lavender sky. She takes my hand and we stop walking. I don't know what it is. At first I'm embarrassed because I don't have any furniture in my apartment. In my bed is a bamboo mat with a single thin blanket. In fading light from a window, the fuzz on her chest and stomach is lucent and blonde. Sweat gathers in a salty pool at her navel. Her skin is darker than Mabel's, and she weighs less. A certain anxiety dissipates as we progress. Touching is fine, like I remembered, but different. Tell me about your first time, she says, face flushed and glistening, tips of her hair sticking to my chest. I tell her about jumping off Bethel Bridge in Cypress Park. I don't mention my perverse curiosity that cold morning, the clear idea I had as I dangled my foot off the bridge to hold onto the buckled chute the whole way down and never release it from my hand. Really, she says, why did you start doing this? I shrug and feign sleepiness. I don't mention the time 4 years ago when I bought half a gram of heroin, or the night Mabel used it, passed out, and slipped under the bathwater we were going to share. I want to explain that I'm not just some thrill seeker, that the arch is the nexus of civilization and wilderness, and there I inhabit a space between spaces, where city and forest are separated by a perfect geometry of solid American steel. But we don't talk, and when I close my eyes, burning scarlet fissures erupt and crack the perfect symmetry of my blue triangle. The next morning, I call my father at Green Grove. He asks the same 2 questions 4 times. Erica wants me to come meet her mother and see something. I can guess what. Her mother, Carol, has hair the same color as Erica's, but much shorter. She asks me what working for Park Services is like and looks at me softly when I explain myself as a nature lover. Erica is quiet. When she faces her mother, they don't make eye contact long, and I find some similarities in their faces. Carol asks me about my hobbies and has a distant look in her eyes. Her voice seems to tremble when she speaks. She absently fingers an earring as if she's worried about something but doesn't want to trouble anyone. I remember that she lost a breast when she was ill. A garden in their backyard is elaborate and well pruned. A tiny creek burbles through it. I take a deep breath and confess. I don't want you to do this. Erica's mouth opens, but before she can answer, I say, it's too dangerous, and I reach for her hand. She crosses her arms and steps back. I'm good, though. What are you talking about? In the kitchen window, the back of her mother's head is visible. Where's this coming from? It's too soon. It's just too soon, and it's just too dangerous. I don't want anything to happen to you. What I don't mention is that I can't possibly handle killing another girl. The little creek sloshes between us. No, she says, I'm still doing it. Forget it. I'm going. Then she breaks our date at 10,000 feet, and I know we won't be up in any more airplanes. She leads me to her bedroom where her equipment is sprawled on the floor. This is what you wanted me to see? It's an Ace 240 canopy in a Paragy 2 container, black, just like yours, she says, moving toward me. I know how to do it, she says, and I will, but I'm asking you to do it. Please, Eric, come on. I'm doing it regardless, okay? Whether you do this for me or not, but I trust you. She puts her head on my chest. I'm still doing it, but I trust you, okay? I nod. I rotate the Paragy 2 on the floor, harness down, and stow the brake lines solemnly. It is grim business. I divide the line groups and run the slider up toward the canopy, observing that the leading edge of the canopy is hanging at my knees while the trailing edge faces away from me. She sits on the bed, watching over my shoulder. The room smells like her, like a young, living girl, some combination of sweat and flora and powder, lotions. I work the fabric between the line groups to the outside of the lines and continue flaking it that way for all sections of the canopy. It's like folding an accordion. The idea is to keep all of the line attachment points toward the center of the pack job with the fabric folded to the outside. The bed squeaks behind me, and her fingernails rub the back of my head. I carefully redefine my previous folds, bring the center of the trailing edge up and hold it under my thumb. Next, I dress the tail and fold it around itself. I stow the lines in the tail pocket and place the canopy in the container. Then I breathe. She kisses the top of my head. Thank you. We sleep apart tonight, and I spend 2 hours in a straight-backed lotus, mentally defining my circle of power, trying to reconstruct my blue triangle. The very beginning of sunrise, false dawn after the moon vanishes. By now the gases in the air have finally begun to settle, so while the sky is a fairly normal indigo, a thick fog under the Bethel Bridge is opalescent, glittered with pinks and purples. She wears loose black pants and a tank top with the parakeet hunched on her back, pads on her knees, her hair tucked under a helmet. I've got my gear on too. We both look down at the fog, which twinkles and undulates beneath the bridge. Pine trees and shrubbery are hushed. You can't even see the bottom, I tell her. She's looking down. So, I count off 3 seconds, right? I'll see it when I get down there. I wouldn't do this. My hands start twitching as she climbs the railing. Erica, you don't have to do it. I am. I'll see you down there. She's taking quick, shallow breaths and can't stop looking down. Her eyes are panicked and remind me of her mother's. Then, when I see that similarity, I understand what it is between us, what must have drawn her to me, and why we're out here. Erica, wait. If you think this will keep you from being afraid, it won't. The fear doesn't stop. It never does. She looks confused and shakes her head. What? I never said that. Her eyes remain fixed on the fog. I never said that. Background noises rise, twittering birds, things scraping in trees and rustling the grasses. The trestle begins to rumble from far-off automobiles. Atop the railing, she grips her pilot chute with white knuckles. She glances at me and fakes a smile. Okay, I'll see you at the bottom. She takes one giant breath and steps off, leaving a splash of fog lingering where she pierced it. I rush to the rail and look down. No, listen, I want to say. What we think is a gesture of freedom, see, is a symptom of our cage. But she's gone. I can't see beyond the mist, already closing the hole she made, and I climb on top of the railing. What can I do but follow her down? Before human beings, a deep river lived here, carrying tons of life between oceans. Now fog below the bridge conceals only a pebbled canyon of cool, dry stone, a garden under purple gas. Rocks thump against my feet as I stick the landing. At the bottom, she's on her knees, the canopy flapping around her. My chute trails like a black flag. We're small among giant ferns and ivy growing inside the jagged walls of this chasm. I lift her and start undoing her harness. She's shaking. She reaches around my back to undo mine. A tear streaks behind her goggles. She says she thought she was going to die. The straps slide down, and I feel the dead drag of my own chute drop away. We promise never to do it again. I purchase a gel-filled mattress that promises to conform to the contours of my spine. I buy cotton sheets. Erica brings me more pillows than anyone could ever need, and I change my schedule so that I'm only working 3 graveyard shifts. Erica wants me to teach her martial arts, so I use my empty living room to show her what Aikido I know. All the kakinage body throws end up with us wrestling and then getting pretty dirty on the carpet. At work, I still appreciate the view, but when I contemplate Mew and the Bushi's goal of joining the void, my feet feel heavy. There's slight vertigo as I gaze down from my office window. Concerning my relationship with gravity, I start to wonder if it even exists, since gravity, after all, is just a name ascribed to a particular phenomenon. Instead, I ponder isolation as the governing physics of this universe. Mass attracts mass because singularity isn't natural, sentience or no, and the basic unit of life isn't 1, but 2. Planets and moons form, and people stick to them because something in the cosmos is trying to keep itself company. Below the arch, a slight lilac tinting of air is all that remains of the once heavy cloud that distorted our skies these last 2 months. Dowling Industrial ended up settling with the EPA for $5 million in a new system of air vents that could suck the eyeballs out of your head. Near the end of July, Erica's father leaves her mother. The lobby at Green Grove is antiseptic in a deceitful way. The rosy wallpaper and carpet are okay, but the plants are plastic, and Muzak plays at a hushed volume. Ms. Teschmacher, the head nurse, approaches me sympathetically. The nurses at Green Grove wear light blue uniforms with navy aprons, and they smell like nurses, like ivory soap and rubbing alcohol. She takes my arm as she escorts me past the smiling elderly who gaze up like I might be someone they once loved. I just want you to be prepared, she says, patting my elbow. My father's room is an 8 by 15 space with beige walls and salmon-colored carpet. Two tall chairs form a V to the left of the television, which sits on a standard wooden dresser. A bookshelf stands against one wall with pictures of my mother and me, his own parents, a Bible, some flowers. His bed is made in military style, sheets so tight you could bounce change off them. He made his bed like that my entire life, and I wonder then if certain things can never go away, movements so right that they can never be unlearned. He sits in a rocking chair wearing his robe and pajamas, staring out the window at the far side of the room. Jacob, Ms. Teschmacher says, guiding me toward him. Ethan's here. Your son, Ethan? He turns from the window and looks up at me. My father's face is a lost expanse of wrinkled flesh and liver spots. He has a still noble jaw and a white crew-cut thinning at the crown. His blue eyes search the space where we stand. He smiles slowly and nods. His hand, dry, stretched taut, reaches out and takes mine. It's good to see you. Really good, he says, with the kind of emotional tone you wouldn't use unless you were faking it. Hey, Dad. He turns back to the window and watches the bucolic, park-like area that exists at the heart of Green Grove's compound. Ms. Teschmacher and I exchange glances, and then my father looks back at me. I'm worried about the grass out there. It looks overdry this season. I crouch beside him and stare out the window. It's not so bad. He smells the same, musky traces of the brute cologne he splashed on every day I ever knew him. I put my arm around him. He asks, do you know Susie Furnessy? No, I said. He turns back to the window, then looks down at me again, and his eyes blaze with sudden joy. Bill, where you been? I used to have an uncle named Bill, my father's younger brother. Around, you know. Well, I'm worried about the grass out there. On the way to the lobby, Ms. Teschmacher says this deterioration will continue and I shouldn't let myself feel hurt by his inability to remember me. I don't feel hurt. He's the one who's having everything gradually peeled from him, his identity falling away, years dropping like skin being shed in preparation for a new spring. As I pull away from the building, I glimpse my father standing in his window, inspecting the grass, and I have a sudden vision of the mew claiming him, its bright void drawing him closer with the most deft and sinister grasp, taking everything he ever was into its light. It's a time when things are taken away. A time when I find a brochure for Bridge Day among Erica's textbooks. Bridge Day is an annual gathering of base jumpers in Fayetteville, West Virginia. For one day in October, base jumping is made legal off the New River Gorge Bridge. She walks into her room wearing a black tank top and jeans, her hair tied back, cheeks slightly sunken. She's thinner. I brandish the advertisement. You're not really going to do this, are you? She shrugs and starts picking things up, moving loose clothes around and stuffing them in the drawers. Hey, you're not doing this, are you? She looks at me and plops on her bed, throws an arm over her eyes. I don't know. I was thinking about it. I thought we stopped all this. I thought we talked about it. She keeps her arm over her eyes. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, she says, not changing position. With one hand, she uses a remote control to turn on her stereo. The Pixies start playing too loud for conversation. That night, I toss and turn on my new, obscenely comfortable mattress. My thoughts center on a girl's body falling through space, on a chute that opens a split second too late to slow her fall. Her body breaks on rocks and stone, the canopy drifting delicately down upon her, and people crowd around, and when that shroud is pulled away, the face I see is Mabel's. My stomach hurts, a cramping I haven't felt since I first went cold turkey 4 years ago. I sleep on the floor. It's a time of transition, when the eyes of summer close and open on autumn. The I Ching says my dominant yin is earth over fire, which means injury to the enlightened. Confucius advises it will be beneficial to be steadfast and break through distress. Because she asked me to, I pack Erica's chute in preparation for Bridge Day. Then I explain that we can't see each other anymore. She gets angry. What? Are you serious? Because I won't do what you tell me? That's meant to goad me. But in my mind, I am a perfect blue triangle, and my heart is the steady, slow lapping of waves on an inner shore. Because I don't want to be there when you die. What? She raises her arms. Nobody's ever died at a Bridge Day. That's not true. 1983 and 1987. Erica puts her hands on her hip and stares with mock disgust. Whatever. I'm not going to be like some mad base jumper. I mean, look who's talking. What's your problem? My triangle holds. I have 3 lines of perfect order pulsing with a cool sapphire glow. I can't handle losing anyone else, I say. And what I'm thinking is, I am so tired of everyone disappearing. So, okay, wait. She sits on the bed and makes a tiny box with her hands. To keep from losing me, you're breaking up with me. I don't expect her to understand the logic. She calls me a coward. She says that I'm the one who's afraid. I turn to leave and she says I'm like an addict. I can't deal with life, so I insulate myself with habit and ideas. I don't turn around because there's nothing else to say. What can you say to someone you love who won't abide her own fear? I take to driving past Green Grove during the day, spotting my father sitting at his window where he watches tree limbs rustle with squirrels. It isn't often that I think of her. One day my father isn't at his window. I look, make a U-turn and pass again, but in his place I see only a pane of glass that shines back the sun. I know he must be in a different part of the home at that moment, yet I stop to stare. In that window's flat, radiant square, I ponder my father, perhaps for the first time, with true clarity. I get my old schedule back at work. I stand at the window when 3 a.m. comes, tightening my harness. Through the glass, the woods are still and mysterious, stretching boundlessly into darkness, while on the other side of the arch a city beats brightly, steaming and vibrating with implied movements. I raise the scarf over my nose and lower the blue glass of my NVTs, and the world becomes a hazed impression with emerald specters. Now I tell myself that I don't straddle the dreams of my culture, but that I stand within them. I'm like the giant black bird perched on the moon, an idea existing between rumor and imagination, the shape you hope to see when you chance to look up after a late night. Now I'm like myth, a UFO, a thunderbird, and this role carries its own concessions, its promise of ritual and discipline, while below, somewhere in the wilderness or in apartments across the river, with telescopes pointed out windows, people wait to see, ready to mold me into whatever they decide to believe that I am. I raise the window and let my legs slip out. Wind caresses me. I clutch the pilot's chute. Now I am a ghost. Banzai. And that's it. Am I supposed to walk off stage now, or make questions about anything?
A few questions.
Sure, absolutely. Everybody has one.
So you said that that was the first short story you ever wrote. So what were you writing before?
Various things that never ended or really began. You know,
So
I wasn't even
short
really-
stories are like a different genre of nonfiction.
Oh no, it was like, I think I'm writing a novel. And the good thing about like when you don't know what you're doing and you just tell yourself you're writing a novel is that you can just keep typing and never notice that you don't really know what you're doing, you know? And so then when I started really studying fiction, a good early approach is the short story because its elements are so manageable. And I eventually came to see that to me the short story requires a great deal more concentration and rigor than the novel. But, I had visions of like a big, 1,000-page book. You would just go through the bookstores and you would see the really big monolithic books. And, like 24 and I don't know anything about anything, but for some reason I think I have an encyclopedic narrative in me. But it was just terrible stuff. And so then I started reading short stories and trying to write them. And this was like the first one that I kept.
I'm curious
Yes,
what kind of research you did to write this.
I didn't do any research for the base jumping stuff, but for the heroin parts, I had to. Not really much. Like I skydived before, and then it was just kind of a question of finding out the facts. about, like equipment and stuff like that, and how to fold a parachute, like how to pack a parachute. And that was really about it. Although a couple of years later, I was in Switzerland and I base jumped after the fact, which was, I don't know, like some desire to make myself authentic after I already jumped it.
Did you learn anything new when you done it that you?
But I wasn't going to do it again. No, I mean, it was, I don't think so. I mean, like, it happened so quick that there's almost no time to really go back and say, did I describe that right? Because it's over like that. And I felt, after I did it, it was before the book came out, so I felt okay enough about the way I described it to let it stand. And then it was funny because like, I recently just read The Red Badge of Courage for the first time, which is great. But I thought it was really funny how Crane had written that without ever going to war, and then the rest of his life he chased war to like kind of make himself authentic, but I mean, I like the imagination's power to take itself somewhere and that it can still prove authentic, It's a kind of truth outside the facts.
Where did the idea for the ghost birds come from? Is that?
You mean like the mythological stuff?
Yeah.
It was like in a way, the story is kind of this amalgamation of a bunch of little subjects I was just kind of fascinating myself with at the time. And I had this big book on cryptozoology, which is all about Bigfoot and Mothman. It's really, really interesting stuff. And the idea of thunderbirds and was something that you just found that it recurred across all countries and stuff. And that thing about a big bird the size of a moon, like in Texas, that was true. That it was in my big cryptozoology book. And so I was also reading a lot of Eastern philosophy and the samurai movies of Akira Kurosawa, and so I was lonely, like this guy, so I just put it all together for, I don't know.
The stuff that you're writing now, what are those stories like?
Well, I finished the novel and I turned that into, it was a novel about two brothers, and and one of them's on the run, and it takes place the first Mardi Gras after Katrina in New Orleans. And I think it's, anyway, the novel got accepted. It was going to be published this fall, and I just pulled it officially last month because I didn't like it very much, finally. I didn't think it was good. And the stuff I'm writing right now began as short stories, and it looks like they're going to be novellas. So I'm thinking now maybe a book of 3 novellas. But to answer your question better, I think the things I do now are much less voicey. Like when I go back to this story, I can see the reliance it has on a first-person narrator, and I don't trust that very much anymore. I think that first-person narrative can often be kind of a crutch of personality that an author uses, because it's a way, kind of like monologuing, where everything that's said has some element of characterization to it. But you think about the things that have been written first person that you just know they had to be first person. They could not be anything else. And those seem really, really few and far between to me. Like I think of like Huck Finn or Lolita, and others. But a lot of times too, it's something you see a lot, especially from people from MFA programs, actually. And often they're very good stories, but they kind of bleed into this generic first-person voice that's quirky and, kind of clever, kind of funny, overly sentimental, overly sincere. And I try to stay away from that more and more. What I'm trying to do, I think, is whittle things down to their essences and see what that leaves me with. I find my prose is getting sparer. I even started reading a lot more drama because I really admire the limitations that puts on you. The way that there's sort of like there's nowhere to hide in drama. Everything that happens has to be character, and it has to be relevant, and it has to move the story forward. And in so many other types of fiction, you can, or in any kind of creative writing, you can hide behind certain things. You can hide behind voice, you can hide behind lyrical descriptions and stuff. And what, as I move forward, I keep becoming more and more concerned with what is essential here. Like what is the insight I'm having or believe I'm having? You know, where are these people that don't exist taking me? So I think I get away a lot with far less gimmicks. Like you would not find somebody who dresses like a superhero and base jumps off things and anything new I write, you know. But, it's much more grounded, I think. And probably less marketable. Yes, ma'am?
So are those concerns more specific to your own writing, like personally, or do you try to kind of?
No, those are specific to my own writing. I mean, with my students, no, I wouldn't say I try to push that on them, because if they can write a really good story in the first person, I think that's great. And
It's a good place to start.
yeah, it's absolutely a good place to start. And no, I wouldn't discourage that at all. You know, I would want them to be aware of the various options they have for voice and presentation, but no, I mean, if somebody writes a good story, it's a good story. You know, this is just sort of the things I want to pursue and the ways I want to grow.
I'm always interested in failure or what you perceive. Why did you?
Oh, I've got a lot of.
I have a lot. Why did you fail the book, and are you thinking of revising it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll revise it one day, probably. It's just that, you know, when I went back and read it before, like I came back from my editor and I was going to do another run through it, and you know, she had a few suggestions, but nothing major, like nothing like an overhaul or anything like that. Nothing even structurally, really. And I was just reading it, and it became very clear to me that this, at least as it is, it shouldn't have been a novel to me. That it would probably be, that I could probably make it a first-rate long story, maybe novella. But some part of me was so determined to write a novel next, and didn't want to quit. Like, didn't want to say, oh, it beat me, I quit. You know, that I sort of just kept pushing and pushing at it. And kind of the analogy I used was that, you know, like after enough work, I had managed to hammer a square peg into a round hole. And it looks like a novel, and it's as long as a novel, but, you know, in the end, I think it's really padded. And my honest opinion of it is that it's well written, but not very good. And, you know, it was just a feeling I had that once you put it out there, it's out there, and that's you, and that's who you are, and that's your reputation, and I just did not want that to be my first novel or my next book. And I mean, I thought it was good enough to like fool my editor and my wife, but it didn't fool me. And you know, I'm not after some perfect, you know, creation or anything. I mean, it padded is the word I think of. You know, like things in it didn't feel necessary, and this story didn't feel necessary. So by the time I was going through it for that final pass, I was just like, you know, the only way I'm going to be satisfied with this would be just to completely rip it down and start all over again. And I was so sick of it at that point that I was just like, I don't want to do that right now either. I have all these other stories to tell. And after it was sort of like getting this monkey off my back. After I just made that decision and shelved it, then I mean all this new stuff started just pouring out. And it was like I'd been dragging around this corpse for a year and a half, and now I finally got free of it. But I think mostly it was just like this stubborn doggedness that I just didn't want to quit. I didn't want, you know, to be foiled.
How was your editor take that?
They're actually really nice. I mean, yeah, it wasn't like they gave me a ton of money or anything. It wasn't like that was going to make them a lot of money no matter what. You know, and I just said, you know, I don't want to let anybody down, but, you know, the stuff I'm writing now is way, way better, and you know, like, I want to write books and make us all proud, and they're really cool about it. I mean, like I said, it's not like they were hinging the future of the company on my book or anything like that. I mean, they were publishing it out of charity more than anything, so they seemed
See
okay.
that very often, do
No, they're great. They're great. Like they're getting bigger every year with Cat and Cage, and they're out of San Francisco. They're independently run, and you know, like they publish some great people. They published William Gay, and they had this huge bestseller, The Time Traveler's Wife, like last year or 2 years ago. Yeah, and you know, I talked to that guy David Poindexter, who's the publisher, you're just like, man, just keep the money and write whatever you want. And I've heard so many horror stories with bigger publishers, like a buddy of mine had his first collection of, it was called Winter Kept Us Warm, from the Eliot poem, and it was supposed to have that title and this really nice picture of snowy woods on the cover. And without telling him or anything, they just changed the title to Trouble and put a cartoon on the cover and said, "Stories about men." Yeah, because like they wanted to market it as like, this is for young guys, because they love to read short stories. And yeah, I mean, and I just hear terrible, terrible things, and so I feel really lucky, about those guys. Anyway, I don't think I would have had the guts, to be honest, enough to pull the book if I didn't like to do stuff I was doing so much. If I was like, maybe I'll never write anything again, I probably would have let it blow it. Once, twice. So, thank you. Thanks.